Welcome to the Friday Pastor's Devotional on YouTube here at Huguenot Road Baptist Church. I'm Bob Lee, and thank you so very much for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Today is Friday, June 20th, 2025, and today we're going to be talking about when our interruptions end up being divine redirection. When interruptions end up as divine redirection. The passage that is for our devotional today is actually the one I'm preaching from this coming Sunday. So today's a little bit of a preview. It's from Numbers chapter 22, verses 21 through 35. And it's the story of a man named Balaam and how God speaks to him through his donkey. So the question for us today is, have you ever found yourself saying something like, God sure works in mysterious ways? I know I have. And often it's after the fact. Something has happened, and then we look back and we say, God sure works in mysterious ways. Maybe it was something unexpected or an interruption, and we're finally able to sense that God may be at work through it. But what about when you're right in the middle of it? When life does not make sense, you're standing at a crossroads, you're in between, and don't see any way forward. So I hope that you'll be here this Sunday as we study this interesting passage, often difficult to understand, but at the same time, one of the most humorous passages in the scriptures. So the man is named Balaam. He is not from Israel. He's not an Israelite. He's from Mesopotamia. And however, God uses him to speak his words and does it in a very interesting and humorous way. So God is trying to open Balaam's eyes to stop him from heading down a certain path. It looks right, but the path is completely wrong. And that's where it's very applicable for us. Sometimes there are things that are frustrating to us or decisions that we are making that are just not good. And God's trying to get our attention. And sometimes the interruption or the detour is actually God's way of protecting us or keeping us from going down that wrong path. So this passage reminds us that God can speak through anything, even the absurd, to open our eyes and to help us listen to the heart of God. That's for individuals. And then this also applies to the church, because sometimes the roadmaps we've been using for ministry, you might call them ministry maps, or the programs or processes, the things that we've been using for years, maybe they worked back in the 50s, the 80s, or even the early 2000s, but they don't match the world we're trying to reach today. And we're going to talk about this book, Canoeing the Mountains by Todd Bolsinger, and make reference to the Lewis and Clark expedition to reach the Pacific Northwest. And I hope that we'll be able to make the connection that some of the things that we've been using don't work anymore. You'll probably remember the Lewis and Clark expedition, and Thomas Jefferson commissioned them to find a trade route by water from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. And instead, they planned on canoeing their way, and instead they ended up being, they were interrupted by the Rocky Mountains. They were going to canoe it, and then they ended up backpacking it the rest of the way. And they went off the grid. It's not failure necessarily, but they had to think of another way to reach their goal. And that's what God, I believe, is saying to us, that we often just need to become learners again, to listen more deeply and to follow Christ into unfamiliar territory with courage, humility, and grace. So I hope we'll see you Sunday. for part 2 of this message series called Holy Misadventures, When Life Doesn't Go as Planned. And we'll discover what it means to listen for God's voice even in the unexpected. And perhaps our interruptions or disruptions or detours are really God's way of redirecting us. Thanks again for watching and listening today. I hope you have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you Sunday. God bless.